My name is
Morning.
Aisha. My name is Aisha Rahim Bolariwa, and today I will be leading you through what I believe will be an exciting conversation on driving state-led reforms for the micro, small, medium enterprise sector's growth. And we have some amazing speakers that would give us more insights as to why this dialogue is timely, both from the private sector, the public sector, reminding us the need for public-private partnerships as we move the economy forward. Why are micro, small, medium enterprise? Why is the micro, small, medium enterprise sector important? We have over 90% of Nigerian businesses classified as micro, small, medium enterprises. 84% of our workforce depends on them. Essentially, MSMEs are the heartbeat of our economy. Yet their potential is stifled by challenges that only state led reforms can really unlock, from simplifying registration and taxation to ensuring reliable infrastructure and finance. Today's dialogue is about equipping states to be reform champions because Nigeria's economic transformation cannot happen from the center alone. It must be driven by states as well. And why am I speaking to you about this? I am also a founder of a micro, small, medium enterprise, Farms to You, which works in the agricultural supply chain sector. And I have experienced the challenges of being an MSME firsthand. And this is what is driving my work with the NESG as a thematic lead of policy and regulation for the micro, small, medium enterprise community of practice. So, today's conversation is timely, it's important. We've seen reforms around taxation, we're seeing increased reforms around other areas of the economy that can really support micro, small, medium enterprises. But there's still gaps. And today's conversation would unlock how can we start to address these gaps. I will start by introducing a dear colleague that we work with at the NESG Community of Practice, and that's Miss Amaka Nwakolo, who is also a director at the Faith Institute, another very important institution working with micro, small, medium enterprises. And as I've already quoted those percentages of there being 90% of companies identifying as MSMEs, the truth of the matter is we would not move the dial of Nigeria's economic growth without moving the dial for this sector. So over to you, Amaka, Mrs. Amaka. We're looking forward to the insights you'll be sharing with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Rahim Bolarewa. And thank you for being our gracious host and anchor today. On behalf of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, I warmly welcome everyone on the call today. Thank you to our very special guests, our speakers, our moderator, and the entire team behind the scenes, just ensuring that the meeting today is a success. We appreciate you for being here early and on time. There was no Niger time, so that's great. It also shows that we're passionate about MSME growth in Nigeria. Like Mrs. Bolariwa mentioned, the conversation today is really focused on driving state-led reforms. But before we even get or delve into that, who is the NESG? What's the NESG about? You know, in case you're joining us for the first time, you're hearing about us for the first time. The NESG is arguably Africa's foremost think tank, and the NESG really focuses on fostering dialogue and partnerships, you know, between the private sector, between government, the development space, and civil society, with the goal of promoting sustainable economic growth and development in Nigeria. As you can imagine, the NESG focuses on several important issues, and so they can't do that alone. And so what happens is that we have a volunteer force that supports the NESG to achieve this grand goal of sustainable economic growth and development in Nigeria. And so the NESG houses what we call policy commissions and communities of practice. And these are groups of experts within the space that come together to focus on very specific issues in Nigeria. For example, the MSME community of practice, which is hosting the conversation today, focuses on MSMEs and entrepreneurship, right? But then there are other focus areas within the NESG, like industrialization, like energy, like healthcare, like education, like youth. All of these different areas have policy commissions or communities of practices that focus on these areas. And so hopefully the NESG team will drop these focus areas on the group, and also a link to join as a volunteer if you're interested in lending your time, your expertise to driving sustainable impact along any of these areas. But today we're having this conversation as a precursor to the main conversation that would happen at the annual Nigerian Economic Summit, the NEST Summit that holds every year in Abuja. Now, the theme of the NEST Summit this year is sustaining reforms, I beg your pardon, sustaining reforms for prosperity and inclusive development. As you can imagine, MSMEs play a critical role if we're going to achieve sustainable reforms, if we're going to achieve or attain prosperity, and if we're going to achieve or attain development in Nigeria. And so whilst, the government is focusing, for example, on driving the economy to reach or attain a $1 trillion economy by 2030, we know that to achieve that, our entrepreneurship ecosystem has to be vibrant. It has to be functioning, at its optimum. And that's why the conversation we're having today is relevant and focusing on MSMEs. It's also relevant because oftentimes there's a lot of emphasis at the federal level, when it comes to driving reforms, when it comes to driving change or impact. But what we've also realized, especially within the MSME community of practice, is that for real tangible impact to happen, state governments, subnationals have to key in, have to plug in, and also drive this agenda, alongside federal government to achieve goals and achieve targets, right? And so that's why the conversation today is focused on driving state-led reforms for MSME growth. And we're very happy to have some states representatives join us today. We have a representative from Enugu State, we have a representative from Plateau State, we have a representative from Lagos State, and then we also have an entrepreneur that runs businesses across states in Nigeria. So we have a rich conversation upcoming, and I encourage you to please participate. Please send in your questions. Don't wait till the end of the panel session. Drop your questions, drop your comments if you have any, and would ensure that we'll take all of them as much as we can. I'm going to pause now because I feel like I've been speaking a lot. But again, on behalf of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and on behalf of the MSME community of practice and all the leaders within the MSME community of practice, I welcome you to this very important conversation, and I hope that we have very fruitful deliberations today. Thank you very much, and over to you, Mrs. Rahim Bolarwa.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nwakolo, and thank you for giving more color on what the NESG does and why the NESG's work is important. As has been said, in terms of reaching that $1 trillion mark, the sector that represents 90% of the economy cannot be ignored. And we often see that the policies, the focus of institutions are often on the bigger, more obvious institutions and organizations. But that's not to say that, that stall, that POS business that you're walking past every day, it's employing, more people than you would imagine. So thank you so much for giving more context on the work of the NESG and why today's dialogue is important. We're gearing up for a very exciting panel session, as has been mentioned. But before we get to that, I would like to introduce our next expert in the room, and that would be Dr. Bumi, who is Dr. Bumi Koli Daudu, who is the director of SMEden Lagos. And we all know how the importance of Lagos as a leading economy, not just in Nigeria, but on the African continent, having economies larger than many African countries. And the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria plays an important role in really unlocking growth for the MSME community and the MSME sector. So would love to hear from Dr. Bumi Koli Daudu, who will be our keynote address in terms of, understanding what SMEden is doing and how state-led reforms from a SMEden Lagos perspective can really help drive growth in this sector. Over to you, Dr. Bumi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the NESG group for this wonderful initiative, and then for also inviting me to give a keynote speech concerning, driving this at a state level. It's important for all of us to know that, MSMEs, it has become a cliche, right? MSMEs are the drivers of the economy. And so in driving the economy, there are so many things that we need to do, even up to the local government level, from the federal level to the it is also important, for us to understand the statistics behind the MSMEs' contribution to the development of any economy, around the world, and then particularly for Nigeria, and then for Lagos. A lot of people say that it is the backbone of India economy. It is also the backbone of Nigeria economy. I also believe that it contributes to employment, to GDP, all forms of the economy and the development of the economy. They are the engine of the economy. They are also the oil, that also drives the engine. So I mean, in different layers, the nano, micro, small, and medium. However, at the state level, regulatory complexities, bureaucratic bottlenecks, and fragmented support system continue to impede their growth in all levels, right? So we are looking for in Sweden the support that we can get, since we are the apex agency in charge of the development of this subsector. We're looking for all the support, all the collaborations that we can get to make sure that this subsector is developed. There's a lot in Lagos, particularly. I mean, the Lagos state government is doing awesome work, and which I think that most other states should emulate. To develop MSMEs. They enhance competitiveness with this framework that the Lagos state government is sweeping out. They drive inclusive economic growth as well, and this is very, very important. But the problem, MSME face, is across board. I mean, in all states, even local governments, there's significant barriers, including complex licensing procedures, delayed approvals, limited access to credit, and even markets, inadequate infrastructure, compliant bodies, and so on. Then state governments, being the closest to the ground, to the ground level challenges, are uniquely positioned to implement targeted reforms that address these systemic issues. However, the absence of coordinated reform strategies and standardized implementation frameworks has resulted in uneven progress across states, limiting the sector's overall growth trajectory. But again, the proposed solution that we are looking at, particularly in Sweden, is regulatory simplification and digitization So the agency has initiated rather the National Council on MSMEs, and these are cascaded also into the states. So there's a state council of MSMEs. For the national, the vice president is the chairman, Smidan is the secretariat. And so all other organizations, both private and public, are also co-opted into that council. And so the work of the National Council is to deal with all the challenges, that has to do with, development of MSMEs in Nigeria. And so, of course, it's also cascaded into the states. At the state level, the governor is a chairman, and who could be deputized by the commissioner for commerce or trade and investment in some cases. And there's also a third deputy, or a second deputy rather, in one of the business membership organization that is so strong in the state. And so the secretariat still remain, at the state with SMIDAN. And then so all other organizations, both private and public within the states, are also, co-opted into that council in the states. For Lagos State particularly, it's a vibrant council, and we're looking at how we can involve more stakeholders into that council, so that MSME's challenges, can be broken down into pieces, and then can then further be solved at the state level. Maybe probably legislated, or it could be an executive order just to support to this. And then one of the score points that we have been confident about is the tax reform, and this gives us so much joy. In the states are also looking at how these can be interpreted or broken down to for MSMEs understanding. The second solution that we're looking at is the financial inclusion and credit access. It should I know Lagos State is doing what with the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. So we believe that even in other states, state level credit guarantee scheme can also be instituted. But for Lagos particularly, the LSETF is doing wonderful work, and MSMEs are so much in Lagos, so much, and it just requires so much efforts from government, not only creating the trust fund, but also some other credit alternative financing mechanism that can be broken down into the local government or even communities. It's also very, very, very important. And so we also look at participation or partnership with fintech organizations, fintech companies, to develop sector-specific lending products and all that. And then the third one is infrastructure development and industrial cluster. I want to develop dedicated MSME industrial parks, common facility centers in most cases, which just becomes a plug-and-play infrastructure. Establishment of technology, upgrade centers where MSMEs also, have to look at where they can adopt technology. And then SMIDAN is also championing with technical expertise from the GIZ DTC, digitalization service points. So this we have noticed that MSMEs with the adoption of technology has been a bit slow, particularly in Nigeria, but Lagos is doing awesome. But yeah, there's room to do more, right? So with the digitalization service points, MSMEs that are non-tech enabled can come into SMIDAN office, start their digitalization journey. We conduct a digital maturity assessment test on them, and then point them to digital consultants. Digital consultants are also trained at the moment, or being gathered together for that support, for that digitalization. And then the fourth one is market linkage and export promotion. So together with the council, we can create an online procurement platform connecting MSMEs to government, tenders, establish buyer-sellers meets, provide export facilitation services, and including documentation support. This will give improvements and competitiveness to MSMEs, within the country. Then the fifth one, which is the final one, is development and technology adoption. Which of course I've mentioned in the third point, but we can launch customized training program addressing industrial specific skills gap, right? Promote digital transformation through subsidized technology adoption schemes and establish innovation hubs, for research and development support. So what we are doing is, aside from helping MSMEs that are non-tech enabled to start their digitalization journey, I'm pointing them to. There's also room for them to provide some sort of services, well-established MSMEs. And so develop new products and all that. So GIZ GTC is also in partnership with us, is creating digital innovation hubs in 5 states in Nigeria, and Lagos is inclusive. And so this of course, give them to the support for MSMEs. We can all work together with implementation strategy for reform frameworks, and so SMEDAN is also open, to discuss with the NESE group in Lagos, the Lagos state government, through the LSETF, and we can do a lot for MSMEs. So I'll just like to pause here and then conclude that state-led MSMEs reform represents a critical pathway to unlock Nigeria's economic growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bumi Koleo Daudu. You've made some very, very valid points that I'm sure resonates with the audience. Even from my, as someone from Lagos State as well, I can double down on some of the things that was mentioned, like the LSETF. LSETF, I accessed work innovation vouchers in 2019 into 2020. And it was extended to 2021 because of the pandemic. And that was the initial foundation that really helped in setting up my company. And similarly, from the innovation perspective, last week, the Lagos State's Science and Research Council, which was the brainchild of now the Honorable Minister Olatobosun Alake of Science and Technology, was also an institution from which we got a grant in 5 million of 5 million naira, which was a lot in 2021. The naira has since fallen, and again that was very critical in terms of supporting the business. I say these things, and of course these are individuals and these are schemes that I wasn't aware of before. But these are the sort of, in terms of access to finance that has been mentioned, access to market, things that can be lifelines for micro, small, medium enterprises. So, I'm great to hear all the, it's great to hear that even more is being done from in Lagos State. Of course, there's the Lagos Innovation Bill as well being proposed by also the Ministry of Science and Technology. And going into this panel discussion, we have, not just the Lagos view, but we have views from Enugu, Edo, and Plateau states. And to that, I would love to introduce our moderator for the next session and colleague on the MSME Cup of Practice, which is Dr. Wayne Eribo. So over to you, Dr. Wayne.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Good morning, everyone. It is indeed an honor to be here. Just hearing Dr. Bumi speak and lay the ground for this conversation today, I'm really excited to go into today's conversation, also because of the quality of the speakers that we have, people who are actually driving change and reform on the state level. I think particularly it's interesting for me, this conversation, because in 2022, I had facilitated under the GIZ setting project a peer learning between LSCTF. We had Edo State, we had Plateau State in the room, we had Ogun in the room, and it was this kind of conversation, just leaning towards what Dr. Bumi talked about, how we can learn from each other and really just continue to drive change across the different states. So joining me on the panel conversation this morning, our speakers from the LSCTF, we have Mrs. Feishayo Alayonde. Please permit me if I murdered that, but good morning and thank you for being here. Also from Plateau State, we have the Honorable Bonkam Ali Wuyep, who is the DG of Plasmeda.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, all.
Thank you for being here, sir. Also joining this
pleasure.
conversation will be Mr. Arinze Chilo Ofia, who is the DG of the SME Center Enugu, and also the Senior Advisor to the Governor of Enugu State. And then finally, because it's also extremely important to have, an entrepreneur on the conversation to speak from that end, we have Dr. Tunde Ayeye, who is the GMD International Facilities Services. Good morning, everyone. It will be great to confirm that you can please hear me to our panelists.
Good morning, Dr. Waimi.
Good morning, Dr. Tunde. Thank you for being here. Mr. Arinze, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, fantastic.
I don't know if you can hear me. Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. So the NES 31 theme this year really challenges us to think not just about introducing reforms, but also sustaining them for the prosperity and inclusive development. For MSMEs, this means reforms must be consistent. It means they must create jobs. It means they must impact women and youth, and they must also, speak down to the rural entrepreneurs. And so state governments have a very critical role in driving these inclusive and sustainable reforms with tangible impact. And so the conversation this morning at this Community of Practice pre-summit will explore how state-driven reforms are impacting SMEs, highlighting both the strength and the gaps across the state's entrepreneurship ecosystems. And so today, really, our focus for this panel conversations will be on driving state-led reforms for MSME growth. And so in opening, I'd really like to just throw one general question to all of our panelists on the call. And that question will really be that how does SME growth, what exactly does SME growth mean for your state's economic development strategy? And how is your state prioritizing SME growth currently at this time? Ms. Feishayo, if you're here, please, I'd like you to start, and then Honorable Bonkam will take it over, please. Thank you. Okay, Honorable Bonkam, please, if you would like to start. What exactly does MSME growth mean for your state's economic development strategy right now, and what are you currently prioritizing in terms of MSME growth?
Okay, good morning once again. I'm very happy to be on this call. I'm sorry, I'm in transit, so the network is a bit, is fluctuating a bit, but I'll try my best to be on the call and to give you insight on what we're doing here on the platform. As was rightly introduced, I'm the Director General, Plateau State Microfinance Development Agency, and we are saddled with the responsibility of poverty eradication and employment generation. And we have our strategic approaches to include linking our MSMEs to access to finance, access to markets, then skill acquisition programs, then recently the labor market intelligence. And currently we also have the Plateau Job Center, which does a lot of services here on the platform. So that's just a brief about what we do in the agency. Basically, it's MSME development. And you ask the question, what does MSME growth mean to us as a state? Or what can we do? I mean, what do we do? I mean, the question, what does MSME growth mean for our state's economic development? One, MSME growth means to us job creation. We are trying to see how we develop our MSMEs to really be sustainable, and then not just sustainable, to also scale, and then to be able to create jobs for our people here on the platform by creating an enabling business environment for them, for them to thrive. And then we're also looking at ways of diversifying economic diversification for our MSME. Can we pack? Okay. Hello. Okay. Sorry, please, because we're in transit.
No problem, sir. Please go ahead.
Yes. Then we're also looking at economic growth means innovation for our MSMEs here on the platform, and then increase GDP for them. We really want our MSMEs to really, really grow and to really grow and be so very sustainable here on the platform. And then we're also looking at how we can reduce poverty, as I told you earlier on, here on in our state, because there are no white collar jobs. So we must develop our MSMEs to a certain extent so that they can actually grow and thrive. So these are some of the things that we're looking when we talk about MSME growth here in the state. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. There's a lot of intentionality in the work that you're doing in Plateau State. Ms. Fayshayo is back now here. Good to see your face this morning.
So I do apologize. I had to attend some dignitaries, so I do apologize I wasn't here. But thank you for having me. Good morning again.
Thank you for joining us. I'll allow Mr. Arinze take his own part of this question while I read it out to you so that you can internalize since you're just joining. And then after him, we'll then bring it back to you. But the question, really, the opening question was, what does MSME growth mean for your state's economic development strategy? And how is, for your case, Lagos State prioritizing MSME growth currently? Mr. Arinze, if you please, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Wayme. It's a pleasure to see you again. To all the panelists here, it's a pleasure to be invited for this session. So what it means for us, MSMEs being the engine room of this current administration, the tomorrow is here agenda, like we like to call it here in Enugu State, under the Dr. Peter Mbad-led administration. For us, it's creating a pathway where we can move from a public sector dependent economy to a more private sector driven economy, growing our GDP from its current position of 4.4 billion, which has improved over the years in the last 2 years, to 30 billion by the end of the administration in 2031. So how we're trying to achieve this is to ensure that we can move the value chain of SMEs, the nanos, the micros, the SMEs, to be able to access finance, to be able to access, skill infrastructure through our human capital development initiatives, to be able to have access to digital infrastructure as well as software infrastructure. And finally, to be able to, have access to markets for the small businesses so they can thrive, in conjunction with putting the right policy frameworks that can ensure this is implemented in the right way, but with the right laws that go beyond this current administration and ensures continuity within those systems. So if you give me the time, probably when we start our session, I can go into further details as to what the particular initiatives that we have within these 4 thematic pillars that we focus on. Access to finance, we have access to, unlocking credit grants and, equity investments for small businesses and startups. My position combines the MSME development as well as digital economy, which I think they go hand in hand. And that's what we've been able to achieve here in Enugu State. And we've been able to have a lot of success in the last 2 years. Our finance initiatives around grants for small businesses, especially with a focus towards nano enterprises, disbursed over 900, close to R1 billion, about 912 million naira to over 28,000 nano enterprises in conjunction with the federal government-led presidential conditional grants, where we did a very extensive statewide MSME data collection exercise. So one of the things I were able to achieve in collecting that data, collecting the surveys that we needed to reform our policies and our implementation programs to support nano enterprises in particular, was just a small anecdote. When your government is trying to interface with this, what do I call it? This category under the SME value chain, there's always some level of apprehension, and we don't really trust government. Probably they want to tax us and things of that nature. So we used data collection exercise as a precursor for qualification for the grants. So we're able to get the right data that we needed, and that helped us in our loan programs, and also ensuring that we're able to provide verifiable data, BVN, NIN linked small businesses, also helping them get their businesses registered as well. Under the COVID-19 program, under Result Area 3, where SMEs are supported, we've been able to provide over 1.2 billion in sustainable grants, again, targeted towards nano enterprises, with a focus on women-led nano enterprise businesses as well, which it's a key focus for us. The data shows that 68% of our nano enterprises in Enugu State are women-led. So, there's a conscious effort to ensure they are adequately supported. And then coincidentally, we also ensured that we provided them with about 1,000 laptops across board as part of our digital inclusion strategies for, again, nano enterprises. We feel focusing on the foundation creates a lot of leverage going upwards. Talking a bit more around skills and human capital development, you cannot grow and develop as a small business, as a startup, without having the right skill sets. And we've been able to achieve this through a very concentrated focus around human capital development, through a very unique initiative called Human Capital Development Loans, where we've created a loan product that is zero interest, no collaterals, geared strictly towards skill acquisition, both technical skills, finance literacy, business vocational skills, construction artisanal skills, and most importantly, tech. Enugu, we have a very youthful population, so that's the key focus for us. And we've been able to disburse about 700 million of these human capital development loans, zero interest. We have a 85% recovery rate, but we can see what it's been able to do in capacity development of our small businesses, as well as providing job access for the youth, and creating a pathway for financial inclusion and access to credit, because you must go through these financial literacy programs to even qualify for loans and grants for small businesses and startups. Going towards, sorry for the noise, going towards digital infrastructure, soft infrastructure. There's been serious investments around co-working spaces in states. We have a flagship partnership with Cafe One, We've set up the first statewide co-working space in partnership with Capital One here in Enugu, and we'll be expanding to 5 other locations across the other geopolitical spaces in the state. We've also come up with a very unique initiative called the Digital Skill Enhancement Zones. So 24-hour spaces with access to power for constant training, constant upskilling. We have 4 locations that are ready now, but the plan is to have 1 location across all 17 local governments. So both the communities and people across the whole value chain can have access to training programs, whether through human capital loans or for free, 100% free. But we've also currently constructing our the Enugu Innovation Village. This is a Northkin concept. So we're partnering with the very popular Kigali-based Northkin to create a similar Northkin concept here in Enugu State. And just to ensure our startups are thriving, and we can also move our MSMEs towards ensuring that they are more tech enabled, and of course, and ensuring that innovation being one of our key pillars as a state, ensuring we're able to generate the right products and the right systems from Enugu as well.
Enugu has been busy.
We've been quite busy.
I
think I should take a break.
It's really interesting. I'm going to come back so that we can drill a bit more into these. Faisha, are you still here? It will be good to hear from you.
Yes.
And then we can drill more into what all the states are currently doing.
Yes, I am. Fantastic. Thank you so much again for having me. Thank you, Doctor. And really good to hear some of the work that Enugu is doing. And I think it was Plateau State earlier on. Really exciting stuff. Nigeria is going forward together. So at Lagos State, our mandate's pretty much similar in terms of creating opportunities for jobs in the state. And we have 2 ways in which we deliver that. It's the entrepreneurship route or the job seekers route. And I always say that not everyone is cut out for entrepreneurship, but we also must acknowledge that those that want to work with somebody need that support, and they could be an entrepreneur tomorrow. So we kind of ensure that all ecosystems are covered. And on the entrepreneurship route, we have 5 interventions by which we support the ecosystem. And we make sure that a lot of the interventions that we do are driven by a needs assessment. We do a baseline at the start of the year to understand what our SMEs asking for, to make sure that under the government, we actually are supporting them with what they need. Governor Sanwo-Olu has obviously highlighted that before he leaves in 2027, we need to make sure that the impact is really felt. And ultimately, that every entrepreneur at the last mile is supported. So the first intervention is obviously access to capital. I think that's a given across board. But then that access to capital, what are they actually using it for? So we always make sure that even as we give those funding, we do extensive monitoring and evaluation. So we actually track how they're using those funds. We give loans at 9%. Right now, we're not at 0%, Mr. Chilofia, but we'll get there. And I was really pleased to hear that when you shared that. So thank you for sharing that. But the good thing is, with the 9% per annum at 0.75, we actually have a 92% collections. And that's something that wasn't the case before, because before we would give out the loans and people would think they're grants. So we've done a lot to educate our SMEs to get them to realize that if you take this 5 million naira loan, for example, today, and you pay back within a year to 3 years, you actually have access to more funds in future, if not with the government through LSETF, but with other partners and other commercial banks in Lagos State. So for us to actually truly support our MSMEs, it's beyond access to capital, it's also filling that knowledge gap, providing financial literacy, and ensuring that they actually truly have the opportunity to succeed. Another intervention, which is very key that I wanted to just put out there, is when we speak to entrepreneurs and the MSMEs, sometimes not even access to capital there's the issue. Some of them actually need, how do they structure their business? Some of them actually have the finance, but they don't have that structure. So we very recently, as a last 2 years ago, we developed what we call the Business Support Program, which is capacity building, giving masterclasses, advisory sessions, starting from how do you register your business? How do you hire the right people? How do you grow your business? How do you ensure that that business is set up for success? We put them in touch with mentors, and all of this is really what is driving and supporting those SMEs to say, yes, you have the asset, but sorry, yes, you have the access to capital, but how do you make sure you build resilience for that capital to be sustainable? And we throw in things like insurance as well. I think that's one thing I always say to myself now in any of these sessions, that please, let's not do a disservice to insurance. It's so important that, yes, you've taken that loan, but how do you ensure that the asset that you've used that loan for is insured? So we always push this as well. And all of that comes under our business support program. So really, the third one is, I know I spoke about the non-entrepreneur, so I wouldn't go to that. But one that I wanted to speak on very, very, very clearly is our tech program as well. So we realized that whilst we don't have all of the funding to invest in the tech ecosystem, we actually know that there's so many people doing good work in tech. So we developed an innovation lab, an innovation program, which incubates incubates tech ecosystem for a minimum of 8 weeks. They come in, develop that little idea, provided they're finding a solution to a problem that exists in the state. And then we put them at the end of 8 weeks in front of potential investors. And we've had some really good stories. We've had people that have started their business and someone has gone in to get equity of 10%, 20%, and they're able to grow a $20,000 business to $100,000 business. And those are the good stories that are coming out of somebody that has been supported in that incubation program. And then there are times where it's not even only about that access to an investor, it's also giving them the idea to say you can be supported. These are the skill gaps that we can close. And we've had good stories where someone has said, at the start of your program, I had 4 staff. By the end of your program, once I was able to restructure my business, I now have 20 staff. And that's really the kind of, interventions that we have done. The last one that I wanted to just talk on very briefly is the clustering of SMEs. And if any of the other states or even anyone in the private sector listening to me have not done, please ensure that you do this, because we've realized that one SME on their own might be able to grow in 1 year time. But if you consolidate them together, they can actually grow in 6 months, in 4 months time. And we've proven it. So we've clustered SMEs together. I'll speak about agriculture. We put farmers together in one location. Ordinarily, one farmer may not have had the good credit history to be lent to, but realize that if you cluster them together, you can actually lend to them as a cluster, as an association. And that we've tried to do that multiple times. We have 100% collections, and we're trying to replicate that across the state, and even looking at other value chains that we can work on. So this year, we're looking at a minimum to support 100,000 entrepreneurs. And we're saying that if we support 100,000 entrepreneurs, they go on to hire 5 more people each. So we're looking at 500,000. So that would be replicated across board. But to date, we've actually supported over 50,000 SMEs. And that's something that keeps growing, because every single day we're seeing that need grow. The only thing about Lagos State that's very, very unique is, even as we're doing all these interventions, people are still coming to the States. So sometimes we're like, the unemployment numbers are not going down. We're doing the most we can with what we have to make sure that, yes, those entrepreneurs are truly, truly supported. So to just wrap up this segment, I'll say that we know that our MSMEs are the backbone of the economy. For us, we track this at 85 to 90% of businesses that form the largest sources of jobs. So we say when MSMEs grow, it directly means more jobs, less poverty, and a stronger tax base to sustain government services. So we also have partnership with LIRS in terms of making sure that they understand why they have to be taxed, and how the funds they're accessing today, once they can pay tax, it allows more funds to be available to somebody else tomorrow. So our development strategy does recognize this and says, with the beyond finance model for entrepreneurs, including insurance, including tax, including business support, capacity building, it actually helps that MSME to grow, to be sustainable, and ensure that they can hire the right people. Whilst we're expanding our access to finance and strengthening business support, investing in skills, we're ensuring that policies are actually in place to support this. And we work with certain ministries to support these policies, to drive these policies, hear directly from the entrepreneurs on what those issues are and how we can support the policies to ensure that it fixes their problem. So the idea is simple. When small businesses get the support they need to grow, they in turn create more jobs and opportunities for the wider economy. And we're here to always learn and make sure that we are doing the right thing by them to grow the ecosystem. So I'll stop here in terms of answering that first question, in terms of how we're prioritizing their growth today.
Thank you so much, Felicia. I mean, you spoke about a couple of things that really, really resonated, the insurance part of it, because we underestimate that a lot. And you also talked about the clusters, cluster method of supporting businesses. We also see that, that's a really fast way that we're beginning to see the ecosystem move towards. And we're beginning to see a lot of, guaranteed group guarantees, for things like that and how quickly they work. And so because you touched on those two, I'll really come back to you and segue in very nicely into our very first direct question to you, which would be that, the Lagos State has implemented several recognizable MSME programs, kind of some of the ones that you've mentioned, but also the recent cooperative-based MSME funding program and the domestication of the Nigerian Startup Act. What lessons can we draw from Lagos State's experience in policy continuity and scaling of this kind of support?
Fantastic. And I like when I heard that question, I thought that was actually very good, because when people speak about policy drive and what government are doing, especially people in the private sector, they're like, oh, it starts with one government, but it stops with another government. And I'm like, no, that's not what we should be pushing. We should be pushing continuity, because that MSME today is still going to be there tomorrow, but hopefully they're on a different level. So to your question, Amy, thank you for that. I think one of the biggest lessons from Lagos I would like to put out there is the importance of policy consistency across administrations. My agency, for example, we started almost 10 years ago. We're going to be 10 years next year, by God's grace. And we've seen almost two administrations or two types of leadership, and there hasn't been any change. If anything, we're now being known for being that implementation partner that drives job creation. So I think we're one example around continuity and why it's important that from one administration to the next, there's continuity and there's no significant change that actually affects the MSMEs that you're trying to support. I think MSME support has remained a non-partisan priority for the state, and I'm hoping that it carries on. In fact, I know it will carry on. And that continuity has allowed programs to mature and achieve impact regardless of political cycles. I think another lesson for us is that programs must be designed to scale. So we almost need to ideate an idea and make sure that we can see what it would look like in 2 years' time, what it would look like in 4 years' time, what it would look like in 5 years' time, whether it's a new product that's supporting, asset financing, or it's a new product that's supporting agriculture, whatever part of the, ecosystem that is being planned for. We just need to make sure that we actually make sure it's measurable and it's designed to scale. I spoke briefly about the clustering of farmers together. It's something that we also do very well in Lagos State across other value chains, and one that I know that the Ministry of Cooperatives, Trade and Investment, they're very big on in terms of clustering MSMEs together. And right now, with the support of BOI, I believe Sterling Bank, they're able to actually give loans to these cooperatives at 0%. They're actually able to give these loans, I think up to 10 million naira. And the whole idea is because they're clustered together, they can almost like keep each other accountable. There's a check-make process around it. And that's one model that I know that we have taken lessons learned. But what are the policies behind this? How do we ensure that things like the Nigerian Startup Act, how do we ensure that we're taking lessons learned from those cooperatives to make sure that whatever the act was set up to do is doing just that? So we have focus group sessions. That's another lesson learned that I think is worth highlighting, where we actually speak to these MSMEs on a biannual basis, just to understand what their pain points were a year ago, what their pain points are now, and if those pain points a year ago have been fixed, and if they're not fixed, why haven't they been fixed? And then that helps us to go back to either affect some part of the policy or bring another stakeholder that can help us drive that part of the policy that we have been able to deliver on. So I think for us at LSCF, scaling support means going beyond loans. For instance, through our employability program, I know not speaking to MSMEs, but it's more saying, whilst we have trained over 100,000 young people and connected them to jobs, we've actually had some of them that whilst they get the job for 3-4 months, they then realize, hang on, I can do it on my own. So we've seen a lot of those come from our employability programs now becoming MSMEs in their own right. And then we go back to them, ask them a lot of questions, ensure that we are getting raw data as to what has helped them to transition from working for somebody to working for themselves. And that helps us to develop better our Nigeria Startup Act. So lessons learned is just taking information from the field, taking data, and ensure we're using that data the right way to continue to drive policy. But then in terms of continuity, it's being intentional from one administration to the next. Take the wins, carry on with those wins, but even those that were not wins, ensure that there's room for growth, but we're not changing an overhaul whereby the MSMEs feel like all the work and contributions they have given before have now been lost. So I think those would be my answers around that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it's really soothing to hear that, because just like you said, everybody feels when somebody new comes in, a lot of things are going to change, support is not going to continue. But just having that reassurance, I'm sure even gives, even the SMEs more drive to be able to come to LSCTF to ask for, the kind of support that they need. Yeah, exactly. Honorable Bonkham, I'm going to come to you now. We know that, Plateau State has a very unique economic context. Great to see that you're settled now, so we can speak better. Yeah, what reforms or policies have been introduced to make Plateau more attractive for MSMEs, and what challenges do you think still remain in Plateau State?
Okay. I'm sorry for the earlier issue. I actually for someone to really sit down and have this speak. Um, for reform in Plateau State, upon assumption of office, Excellency the Governor by Caleb Manuel Sekitman inaugurated the MSME Council, and the MSME Council is headed by the State Government of State, and through a particular engagement that we were able to benefit the MSME policy, and we had to include the managed businesses um, in the MSME policy, because part of our own businesses here on the platform are really small businesses. So that's one of the major reform that we have done by having the MSME council. Then we also inaugurated the ease of doing business council, where other relevant government agencies, ministry departments and agencies are on that council, and their main focus is to ensure that they provide an enabling business environment for our business really, really thrive. So these are some of the reforms that His Excellency has also done in the state. We currently also have an MSME development fund, which is MSME, and that for affordable finance for
Sorry,
our.
Honorable, your audio is not very clear. Could you please maybe speak closer to your headpiece?
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's a lot better now. Thank you.
Okay. So we now have an MSME development fund, which is an offshoot of the MSME policy. And what we're targeting at the MSME development fund is to provide affordable financing for our MSMEs. The operationalization of that particular fund is to ensure that our MSMEs have or can access single digit interest loans for scaling up in the state. And we're also working with the Bank of Industry to see that we implement jointly the matching fund for our MSMEs that has to do with access to finance in the state. So these are some of the um, efforts that His Excellency is currently doing or we're doing in the state to see that we provide an enabling business environment for our people. And there's also great collaboration with the Plateau State One Stop Investment Center, where we have organized a series of stakeholder engagements to see how we can change the narrative on the issues of access to finance in our own state. So we are currently doing that at the state. So we still have some challenges. The challenges are that the MSMEs are yet to access finances, even though over 300 now at the moment have done that. We are also spreading our tentacles to work with the deposit money bank to see if there are affordable finances for our MSME friendly products that they have to see so that our MSMEs can really access that. And I think we reach a switch. Well, made a great progress with access and FCMB, and at the particular, I think in about a week's time, we are going to wrap up that, and then His Excellency has also given an approval, and we are hoping that in the next 50, we will be signing the matching fund agreement with the Bank of Industry. And one of the major problems that we have in the state is the lack of data and its management, and we're really, really trying to bring on board all the relevant agencies to see how we deal with those with issues of data, and then really working on it to see how we can bring it to bear on the activities of our NSMEC on the street. And then another major problem that we have, which is also being addressed, is the issue of the infrastructural development. And I think His Excellency is also working on it because at the moment we have improved transport services in the state, and some of the roads too are being reconstructed and remodeled for better accessibility for our MSMEs. And then, of course, the of recent, the insecurity that in some parts of the state has also affected some of our MSMEs here in the state. But we have taken deliberate and intentional efforts to see how we can cope that so that our MSMEs can really, really function very well in the state. Other efforts of His Excellency, even as regards access to finance, is the implementation of the NGCS program under the resort area, actually, which our agency is also handling. And he has approved, I mean, we've disbursed over 1 billion naira, even in that regard, to our MSMEs, to nano and micro businesses in the state, which has also helped very significantly. And to see also how we can deal with the issues of multiple taxation. So we're working with the Platinum Revenue Service. Even last week we had an engagement together with MSME in the state on the issues of multiple taxation, which was sanctioned by His Excellency, and I think we've reached a very significant agreement with the Platinum Revenue Service on how to reduce some of the tax burdens on our MSMEs in the state. So these are some of the initiatives that we are currently working in the state and giving very good results. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear the intentionality of Plateau states with, both the capacity building side of things and, the access to finance. And so I'm going to bring this now to Enugu State, Mr. Arinze. And we see that Enugu has adopted, a digitally driven approach to MSME growth. In your perspective, what reforms would you think have made the greatest difference in empowering these startups and youth-led businesses within your state?
Thank you very much for that question. And I really appreciate the feedback from the two previous speakers. So for Enugu, the digital, just saying things like digital innovation is actually one of our 4 pillars as a state government. The governor has come in and ensure that innovation drives everything across the board, across all our 4 MDAs, across all our MDAs in the state. So one of the key things that we've been able to do is ensure it's pretty much acts as our operating system for MSME growth in the state. The adoption of technology, and it's embedded within all our interventions within the state, and it helps in breaking down barriers for startups, like you mentioned, youth-led businesses, to be able to, like I mentioned earlier, have access to markets, finance, skills, and global visibility, which is very important. So one of the key programs or one of the key initiatives is the digital identity and precision targeting. Just like the last speaker said, data is a very critical thing that we face, all of us face within our the ecosystem that we drive. Lagos State, for example, with good work they and the team they are doing, like she said, the amount of people that come into Lagos on a daily basis sometimes might seem like you're not even pushing the needle. And but it's important that we are able to identify our businesses across board. And we've been able to achieve that, like I mentioned, first of all, playing on perception, playing on psychology, to be able to get the right relevant data we need with access to grants as an incentive. But it works. It works. I tell you, it works. And we've been able to profile over 300,000 MSMEs and youth, and we've geotagged all of them. So I know all their locations. They have BVN and NIN linked, and this helps solve the issue of invisibility of the nano enterprise. Now that they are digitally visible, we can help with bankability and traceability and tracking as well. Just like Faye mentioned. It also helps us to, yes, very, very particular, like Dr. Wemi, I think the last time we met, you do a lot of work around women-led small businesses and SMEs. So for us, we're very deliberate about ensuring that, we have programs that are gender specific. So with this data, we're able to target programs for specific gender that are women-led, sector-specific, location-specific, that just ensure that youth and women are prioritized in everything that we do. Then we also have a similar partnership with GIZ. We've set up our Enugu Jobs portal and the Enugu Job Center. Sorry, there's a background noise. I hope it's not cutting to this, doing construction. Okay, thank you. So with this job portal, we've been able to place in the last 2 years over 50,000 youths into formal jobs. Pathway to jobs, both white-collar jobs and vocational skills-based jobs. So another thing is broadband digital access. As a business, I know in Lagos where the digital infrastructure is quite robust, we have to ensure that the businesses in Enugu Metropolis are not being affected if you're a business in one of our agrarian local governments. We want to ensure that they all have similar access to markets and to be able to express themselves digitally. So with support from our office, we've been able to pass the zero right of way policy and also a dig-one policy. So, this helps in ensuring that we're rolling out fiber optics across all 17 local governments in the state, so that all MSME startups are now digitally enabled and have access to digital infrastructure. We also have an initiative called the 260 Green Smart Schools and the 260 Primary Healthcare Centers. I know it might look like there's not an alignment with MSME development, but what this does with our partnership with NIGECOMSAT, we're able to provide, again, bringing digital access to our rural communities. And this infrastructure can also, especially with the smart green schools, it acts as a cohabitation place for nano enterprises to come and also get training, capacity development training as well. So there are 260 of them. Every ward has one. So you can now see the impact in our community-led capacity development efforts for small businesses and startups across the whole value chain. Earlier, I was talking about hubs. We've done a lot of work there. Our partnership with CAF1 cannot be underestimated. In our ecosystem here in Enugu State. The Enugu Innovation Village, like I mentioned, is going to go a long way. It's pretty much a multi-sectoral innovation hub designed to anchor global VCs, accelerators within Enugu State, with a focus in fintech, agri-tech, health tech, the creative economy. We're very big on that. We also have our Enugu Fashion and Garment Hub, where we are fully supporting the creative economy and also using it as a production facility for our state government needs and commercial needs as well. What else? So we also have initiatives where, so one thing we realized in Enugu State, and one thing I also realized when I had been doing a lot of these human capital development projects, especially around tech, we've done several programs, partnership with Old School Africa, Utiva, Data Science Nigeria, just a number of them. We've done significant programs, 15,000 youths have benefited, but I realized upon, we finish these programs, we could provide access to jobs for these youths, that are going, whether the entrepreneurial route or, 9 to 5 supporting startups. Unfortunately, I found myself exacerbating the brain drain because after a while, these companies want them to move to whether it's Lagos or Abuja. So what we're doing now is investing significantly into IT-enabled and BPO outsourcing facilities. So what we're doing, we're taking old government buildings, renovating them to be able to provide these spaces. Currently, we're working on 3 such spaces right now. One of them is going to provide 1,500 seats. So once you finish your training programs, you don't have to leave. You can work from here and provide services to global startups, MSMEs, and whether in Nigeria or abroad. This is what we're trying to achieve. We also have partnerships with the NCC for some of their dormant assets here in Enugu State. The Digital Industrial Park is going to be converted into a world-class BPO outsourcing cluster that hosts about, like I mentioned, 1,500 tech-enabled jobs. The DBI, we're looking to convert that into an AI campus that's a tech-focused university and AI research innovation campus is going to go a long way with what we're trying to achieve. Currently, we have programs that are ongoing. We have a program called Project Turing. It's a partnership with Turing Tech, where individuals go through a 12-month full-stack software engineering with AI fundamentals. And upon graduation, you're immediately placed in a job that pays you $20,000 a year. So for individuals that have lived abroad, went to school abroad like myself, $20,000 is well below minimum wage. But in Nigeria, it's almost 30 million naira. So it's, we're able to tick the box with that and provide thousands of opportunities. So far, we're starting with 500, but want to scale that to 5,000 over 2 years for just that particular program and partnership. So imagine the scale of other partnerships that are coming into play that, MOUs are being signed at the moment, and that has a lot of potential. Should I stop? Sorry.
No, I mean, I think one of the things I'm going to throw to Annie is we probably need a fireside chat with just Enugu at this point, because it seems like you guys are doing so much. I didn't know so much work was going on in Enugu, and just because of this, honestly, I'm going to find a way to come to Enugu and have a sit down with you,
Yes, yeah. I think the
I
last
think
time you were here. Okay,
interestingly,
sorry.
yes, we have a hanging conversation, but also just to say thank you to you for the focus on women, because I was going to put it in somehow, but Amaka hooked my hand. So really just to say thank you for the work. Really, it's great work that Enugu is doing. And I think we need to tell the story a lot more, so that the youth, so that maybe we'll also reduce the number of people who are coming into Lagos and begin to drive them to Enugu.
Yeah,
To
so
take advantage of the opportunities,
yes, we
that are
really
there.
want you guys coming to
Indeed,
Enugu.
indeed.
Yeah, yeah.
Dr.
I know
Tunde,
I'm running out of time. I
yeah,
just wanted to add two more tidbits in there when you talk
okay.
about the access to markets. Currently, we have a program that we do every year in partnership with Nigeria Branching. It's called the Enugu 42 Nigeria Branching Trade Fairs for small businesses, and I can tell you, the access to markets and the opportunities for small businesses in Enugu and the ones that even come in has been tremendous. Last year, we did over $500 million in sales, over 400 vendors, 30,000 participants came. So it just shows you that Enugu is ready for business. Enugu is opening up. Our international conference center is ensuring that we can also become a tourist and commercial hub within the Southeast and hopefully Nigeria as a whole. And okay, let me stop there. I don't
Yeah, and
want to
your
like
international
this.
airport is open. I've flown there from Ethiopia. So indeed, the hub is opening. Sorry about the noise. I'm in University of Lagos for a training, and I think it's break time for them. So Dr. Tunde, I'm going to come to you. We've heard from our policymakers, right? We've heard from Lagos, from Enugu, from Plateau States, but from your own point of view, as an entrepreneur, what practical reforms would you like to see from these states that will make running a business as an SME less burdensome?
Thank you very much, Dr. Waimi, and thank you to the organizers, NES, for the opportunity to speak or share my own thoughts and experience as an entrepreneur. But let me just make the first note, is that I feel totally outnumbered. We have a panel of 5 people. I'm the only SME on it, and we're talking about SMEs.
I'm an SME with you too. Don't worry. You're in good company.
So I was going to ask Aisha to please join me to talk to the policy to our policymakers, because it's extremely very important. But I said that as a joke, but I also say it to make my first point about what I think our policymakers need to focus on in making life easier for the SME. And please feel free to mute me if you think I'm getting totally misaligned, because I'm going to really, I'm going to just say it as I believe it is. The first thing is there's got to be a paradigm shift about how we think and engage with so-called MSMEs. As policy people, the first thing, and it speaks to our paradigm. It's not what we say, it's what we do. The truth is, I've said it as a joke, but we're here talking about how to reform, MSMEs, and without thinking, the name of the only MSME is the last on the list. I'm not saying that, out of any malice. I'm just saying, let us rethink our paradigm. And what am I saying in practical terms? Can we establish opportunities for engagement with MSMEs in a structured manner? Listen, I had the opportunity of serving as an advisor to government. When you bring government people together, all we are going to just hear is all the good things we're doing. And it's not reflecting on the streets. That's the truth. It is not touching the guys on the street. So let's face the music. Let's tell ourselves the hard truth. So I think one of the first things that can happen is just a total paradigm shift about how do we think about MSMEs. That's the first thing. The second thing that I want to rush through my points because I believe for time. But the second thing I think that can be done is this. First and foremost, before we start talking about reforms, let's even talk about form. There cannot be any reform if there is no form. Today, I humbly submit that a lot of potential that we have within our states are not being unearthed. And so you have survivalist businesses. For anyone who is above 40 in this room, Tell me one business today, one business in Nigeria today that you know that has transited from one generation to another. Most businesses start as startups and MSMEs because the environment, the policy, the regulation just stifles those businesses and they die many times with their owners. And so the second point I'm trying to make is our policy people need to change what they are doing. The focus needs to shift from, there's just an unhealthy focus on the supply side of the equation rather than the demand side of the equation. What we need is not grants and handouts and single digit loan. That's not what we need. What we need is not access to market. What we need is market. There is no market. What am I accessing? What you have are small little mom and pop shops, a lot of tokenism. We give a few people, I hear 1 billion, I hear all kinds of figures that are being bandied. And what do I mean in practical terms? So for instance, what I believe that all the promotion agencies and all the LSCTFs and all of that should be doing should not be to try and replace the role of deposit money banks or development banks, which is what I see happening, or try to become the social safety net programs by giving out grants, which is what I see, happening in a lot of times. I heard the great job that is happening in Enugu, but why should the state be involved with rolling out fibers when we have telecom companies that the smallest of them is making over $1 trillion in revenues? So can we look at what these agencies should be doing? What should they be doing? Focus on creating markets in the states and local governments, focusing on areas of competitive advantage. The entrepreneur will find his space. MSMEs will grow if government focuses on that. For instance, if Lagos State says, LSCTF says, in the next 10 years, we are 10 years now, over the next 10 years, we would like to support, we want to focus on, let's say, tourism, for instance, and say that we have water all around. What we want to do is, how do we create policies and regulations around tourism and focusing on our waterways and all of that, and to ensure that people who have interest in that sector will take advantage of it and the value chain grows. It is not, and everyone has that. So whether it's Edo and it's a cultural heritage, or Enugu focusing on power and creating and focusing on the development of the market, not on the supply side. The private sector, capital is always looking for where to rest. Let us create the markets that people can go to. Listen, rather than spend the money and giving out to people, use it to procure their services. Rather than giving out $1 billion to people, and setting up a garment factory that half of the time will be underutilized, why don't you say, I have $1 billion to buy adire, and I will ensure as government that I sell it to China or sell it to UK. People, if I have to get a sewing machine under my bed and use my blood to power it, I will do so. That is what entrepreneurship is. It is not opening up shops and doing exactly the same thing. I hear a lot of access to capital, access to finance, completely overlabored, and it is not changing. Can I also beg our policymakers, please, can you please change your KPIs from macroeconomic indices to microeconomic indices? I do not know what a $1 trillion economy means. I do not know what moving from 450 billion to 750 billion. I have no clue, and I'm not interested. Can we focus on indices like unemployment rates? Have you been able to put people in jobs in 4 years? How many people have you lifted out of multi-dimensional poverty? How many people have access to healthcare? A country of 200 million people, less than 50 million people have access to social health insurance. How many people have access to education? That should be the focus. Those are foundational reforms that I believe that MSMEs will have a foundation to grow and to thrive. Then the other issues, of course, if you're talking about nano businesses, they may need, loans and grants and all of that. But what we need is form over reform substance over spectacle, market over access, to market. That is what we need our policy drivers to be doing. The other issues around taxation and registration, for me, those are tokens. And a real entrepreneur would overcome all of those hurdles. If I have a market to sell, I have where to sell my services, my products, and my goods, I have the support of government in creating that market, I will thrive, irrespective of what of those hurdles are. I will yield briefly at this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tunde. It's always great to hear from the entrepreneur side. I mean, all of the things you said are very, very, very salient points. Markets, I'm worried of using the words access to markets because of what you've just said, but markets indeed are one of the most important things that we can really use to drive, entrepreneurship. When there's a market, like you said, people will do what they're supposed to do, but we cannot take away the fact that, we need to really hit this thing from every side. Because of what he said, I'm going to come to you, Feishayo. Mr. Arinze, I can see your hand up, but I'll come to you quickly. Feishayo, just hearing that infrastructural deficiencies, have been cited as one of the major constraints for MSME growth. Yeah, so we're talking about electricity, we're talking about road network, digital connectivity. How is Lagos State addressing these infrastructure gaps that hinder MSME growth?
Thank you, Doctor. Sorry, I've had to have my camera off because I'm on the move and the network is not the greatest, but I should be settled in 2 minutes. So it was very good to hear from Dr. Tunde, and I was even saying that some of the feedback he had given, definitely agree with him that there's a lot more we can do. But I also want to remind him that from a demographic point of view, we have a lot more micro SMEs, like micro SMEs that still need some of these interventions. But I appreciate the point around, changing our focus and using more policy. So thank you, Doctor, for sharing that. And I was really writing as you were speaking. So thank you again. So to your question, Wayne, sorry, Doctor. So in terms of infrastructure, I would highlight that what we have done at LSETF is, and I spoke about it briefly before, was in terms of clustering our SMEs together. As I'm sure we all appreciate, infrastructure is literally one of the most capital intensive thing that any MSME needs to overcome when it comes to either starting up their business or continuing the business or scaling their business. Now, the reason why we worked on a clustering model with the help of our partners is because we realized that if we can actually help provide power, help provide tools, help provide, actual equipment to an MSME in one location, it can actually help them focus on what they need to do in their business to grow. So I'll give an example. In Aguleba in Ikeja, we actually launched a hub in the beauty space where we actually said to the entrepreneurs in that space that they could pay a token of a fee, but they didn't have to worry about power. They didn't have to worry about the tools of their trade. They just come in to use that space for 6 months and they can bring their clients in. And the beauty of that is in that 6 months, they have saved enough to be able to stand up on their own after the 6 months. But hopefully they then have enough money to then have access to build all this infrastructure. But I guess the beauty space is a very small one. But another one I had to speak about was my parent ministry, Ministry of Wealth Creation, and the government. They literally launched just this weekend the Leather Hub in Mushing. I don't know if everyone caught that. That is an actual direct response to making infrastructure available and affordable to MSMEs. Again, using the clustering model. So this Leather Hub is saying if any MSME is in the leather space, they no longer have to worry about the tools of their trade. They no longer have to worry about the machinery. All of that is in one place for them to work of because they've been clustered in this location and all of this machinery has been provided for them. And also they have access to the raw materials because the location of that hub is in the market that has all of these raw materials around the leather space in there. So access to infrastructure with something that is a constant need and a constant intervention that we need to provide and solve for. But with the model that we have identified in terms of or the hub model, we believe that that's one way that we can actually close that gap. But again, I'm sure we all know as Nigerians, we know that we need to also find alternative sources to this. So alternative sources to energy is one that I know that we keep hearing feedback from our SMEs. And yes, doctor, we do hear the voice of our MSMEs. I had spoken about focus group sessions that we do to make sure we can get direct feedback. So we're working on an asset finance product where we actually support MSMEs to find alternative sources of energy so that their actual power solution is actually one renewable, is one sustainable, and it doesn't cost as much to run their plant or run their service. So these are some of the interventions we're working on through my parent ministry and then other ministries in Lagos State to make sure that access to infrastructure is something of the past. It's still a journey. We're still working on it, but these interventions have helped us so far to support the MSMEs we've worked on in Lagos State.
Thank you so much, Feishayo. I think rapid fire style now, we're going to throw one final question to the panelists, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. I see the question and answer is beginning to buzz. So we're going to create some space for the people on the call to ask direct questions to, the representatives from the different states and the entrepreneur that we have on the call. So this question is to all four of you, please. We often see that implementation stall after policy announcements. That's one of the things that we really see in Nigeria. What accountability mechanisms do your states have in place to ensure reforms impact entrepreneurs directly? So I'll start with Lagos, Plateau, Enugu, and maybe if our entrepreneur has something to say, but please, 1 minute. What accountability mechanisms do you have in place to ensure, the sustainability of these policies that are being driven?
I think I spoke about that earlier on. Thank you, Doctor. It's monitoring and evaluation. We can't put any intervention, we can't invest in any of these interventions without actually monitoring them and making sure that they are actually delivering on what it was set up to do. And how does that monitoring and evaluation occur? We actually do this very frequently where we go out on the field, speak to our entrepreneurs to ensure that whatever intervention we've done, we're actually getting raw information from them on how it's benefited their lives. So it's really with monitoring and evaluation and constantly speaking to our entrepreneurs that we choose to work with to make sure we're measuring the impact that we've done in Lagos State.
Thank you so much, Honorable Bonkampi.
Hope that was 1 minute.
Well, you tried.
Okay. In addition to the monitoring and evaluation, I earlier said that we have the state piece of doing business council, where the council also receives a feedback from the interventions or the interventions that we give to our MSMEs here on the platform. Then we also are partnering with the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council to also get the feedback from our MSMEs on their direct requests to the state for interventions. Then very recently too, the governor also has a meeting every end of year with the business community to actually have an interface on the impact of government intervention even on their particular businesses. So these are some of the efforts that we do in addition to the MIE package.
Thank you so much. Mr. Arinze, please, how does Enugu do this?
Thank you very much. So for us, we've identified that the biggest gap in governance is not ideas, just like the entrepreneur mentioned, is the execution and accountability. So for us, it's not necessarily just making these announcements in fanfare. How can we track delivery, verify impact? So we're able to do this in a number of ways. Ensure, so for example, in our loan programs, human capital development programs, they are all performance-based disbursements. All our financing models are tied towards clear performance triggers. That's very important for us to verify our data and ensure it's the funding and support are getting to the right groups. The statewide digital identity and monitoring dashboard has gone a long way in ensuring that we have a single source of truth, pretty much, where all our grants, loans, training programs, that is tied towards a verifiable beneficiary record. So it helps eliminate duplication, those beneficiaries and leakages as well, and provides us a real-time dashboard on tracking applications for jobs, placements that are ongoing, among other dynamics. Also, interagency delivery units, each flagship program that are typically multi-sectoral has, support within different MDAs, like just 30 more seconds within the budget and planning, trade and investment, ICTA, amongst others. Transparency and independent verification. Again, all our programs are independently verified by external auditors, just as part of our ethos in the state for accountability and traceability. And I will end it with, similar to what my colleague mentioned in Lagos, citizen engagement and feedback loops. This is sacrosanct. Every quarter, we have sessions with the ecosystem, MSMEs, just to understand what their issues are and ensure we're meeting with them. But we also have multi-channel support lines, WhatsApp, SMS, emails, working centers for 24-hour response and commitment to our people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Tunde, I think my question in 1 minute to you will be, how do you think that these state governments can hold themselves accountable on the policy interventions that they introduce in 1 minute?
And I'll do it in 1 minute, Dr. Oemi. So just one point that I want to make in that regard is this. Whatever interventions there are should be linked to very simple human development index. We can have a great program and what we set out, we met our objectives. But governance is a social contract between the governed and the people that between the governed and the people that govern them. And at the end of the day, the measure of that is our human development index. So my point is, guys, when you have any program, drill down to 1 or 2 or 3 indices that we will be able to see in very transparent manner at those citizen feedback loops that you're talking about, to say, this was where we started from. This is the index that we're measuring. And we can see that 10 people are now out of jobs and they're employing 2 or 3 more people. Those are the things that matter to the people at the end of the day. Have I taken my minute?
Yes,
Last point on infrastructure, please, pardon me. Just to reaffirm, infrastructure that does not align with a market focus is going nowhere. Power is important, like everybody says, but I think transportation is the most important. An economy that is not moving is not going anywhere. Regional integration of our road, our rail, and our water transportation will create a brand new water economy, a brand new ecosystem around tourism, etc. I thank you for having me, and I yield finally.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tunde. I'm now going to yield to Ms. Aisha to take us through the question and answer segment. It's been great having this conversation with all my panelists. Thank you all so much for showing up. Thank you.
Yes, vibrant conversation. It's always nice to have a bit of energy as we have this dialogue. And there's so much that has been said. Thank you for questions that have been asked. There are a few that I have addressed. So if your question is not answered live, it is answered in the chat bot. But if I start with Nathaniel's question, which touches on data, and data was referenced by Mr. Rinze, it was also referenced by Honorable Bonkamp as well. So question for Mr. Rinze and as well as Honorable Bonkamp, and I think I'll also bring in Ms. Faye here as well. How is data for MSMEs? How do you capture the insights from the data that you that you collect on MSME engagements. Ms. Faisa has already mentioned how monitoring and evaluation is key on knowing the progress that is being made by your agency's activities. How do you translate this into actionable insights in terms of maybe using it as funding from raising domestic funding, trying to grow your initiatives? Because of course, what LS ETF was doing from year one is very different to what you're doing now. So if I start with Ms. Faisayo on that point, before then moving to Mr. Arinze and finally Honorable Bomkam, that would be great.
So I think you need to take the question again. So you're talking about data. How do we use data?
Yeah, so in terms of taking the raw data, driving that into insights, and then using that to inform your strategic implementation of, this is the direction we need to take in terms of continuing to build. Because I imagine that, there's some data that drove why 9% single interest loan was important for driving a business. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so very quickly, when Doctor was speaking, I put a comment in the chat in terms of the voice of the beneficiary, and that's something that we do very, very well at LSTF. So we have impact assessments that we carry out, and we've done that. I think we did one last year or 2 years before. We're due to do another one, and it's basically understanding our interventions over a certain period. And we actually speak to the beneficiaries that have benefited from this, and also people that have gone on to employ, because we also speak to direct beneficiaries and indirect beneficiaries. And then we also speak to other ecosystem players. And the questions are very, very straightforward in terms of what do you do now and what is it that you would like to do? What are your issues? What are your problems? And then we take all of that information to then make a decision around what next. Because like we all agree on this call, there's no point delivering something that's not adding value to a beneficiary. So yes, we take data on the field, we do the assessment with our consultants and independent partners just to make sure that there's credibility and there's trust in the system. And all of that drives our product information, all of that drives our program implementation. And even when it comes to talking about budgets as well, how do we allocate certain fundings to what programs? It's all to do with data that we've collected and the voices of our beneficiaries.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Faisayo. And it actually ties into something that you mentioned in one of your earlier comments, which was on the Nigerian Startup Act. How is knowledge sharing being done across states? And again, it is playing true to the aim of today's conversation, which is driving state-led reforms. And again, I hold the same optimism for you as a previous beneficiary of the LSETF innovation, workspace vouchers, as I mentioned very early on, and also a last year grant recipient, that the continuity of these agencies are very important in terms of ensuring that benefits continue to be felt. Coming to you, Mr. Arinze, within the Enugu ecosystem, how are you taking learnings from, for instance, what Lagos State is doing, the Enugu Innovation Village, while not entirely, something the same as LSETF or LASRIC, it does echo or, have some similarities to the ecosystem effects that Lagos State has done. So the question to you is now from an Enugu lens, how is data informing your activities, and how are you taking learnings from what other states are doing, to Mrs. Faisayo's earlier point of the role that things like NSA can play for the MSME sector?
Thank you very much for that question. So like I mentioned earlier, data is pretty much the backbone that drives our implementation programs and also helps us to reassess the impact of what we are doing. I've talked at length as to our MSME and job digital identity database and how they are all 300,000 plus small businesses and all profile BVN linked and geotagged to ensure, these are the verifiable businesses that we can offer access to finance initiatives because we have screened them and it meets certain requirements, as well as our training programs as well. Also, from a data standpoint, all our programs, all our human capital development programs that cut across tech skills, like I mentioned, financial literacy skills, vocational skills, training over 15,000 youths in the last 4 years. All of them have been driven by data. We first of all, do data collection exercises, meetups with the ecosystem, just to understand what their needs are. Open surveys, understand what their needs are, and now are able to tailor programs that fit those needs. This has informed all our training programs, and also upon conclusion in those programs, we are able to, also do a post-assessment report, understand the viability of the training program, what can be improved, and also understand how the job placements are going after the completion of those programs and how we can tweak certain things. This has informed our partnership with UNDP on the Nigeria Jubilee Fellows Program. We've been able to, as the first state government talent agency, we've been able to place over 500 youths in MDAs and other private sector firms. Just within the last 1 year. This is one of several initiatives that have been guided from the data we've seen. Going back to the small businesses, the data that we got from the collection exercise led to the creation of the Enugu Nano Ecosystem Report, similar to what MoneyPoint did. And from there, we're able to get key indices, understand, what the key needs are from a digital inclusion standpoint, and understand the key unemployment triggers and create policies that support that, whether it's zero interest human capital development loans or single digit loans with BOI, about 3 billion micro financing program that are targeted towards specific groups. It's all led by these kinds of initiatives and data churning and visualization as well. We also have, in the end, it's pretty much the bedrock of everything we do. This data informs initiatives that we're able to create, similar to the campus hackathon. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much, Mr. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Arinze. And, we're a bit short on time, 13 minutes to go. So I want to come to a question on the Nigeria First policy. And given the time, we will not be able to answer all questions. I can call on colleagues to respond to questions in the Q&A box where they can. But yes, coming to a question in the chat bot, which from Fire Williams, is on the Nigeria First policy as a way of patronizing SME products and services. As I wasn't able to come to Honorable on the previous question, Honorable Bumcam, do you want to share what Plateau State is doing? Because of course, from an agricultural perspective alone, which is my sector, you have things like strawberries, you have such a variety of products being produced locally, and of course, that's just agriculture. But on a Nigeria First policy implementation perspective, what stance is Plateau State taking? If we can capture that in a minute or so. We might not have Honorable Bumcam, and so that we get through in time, I will come back to Ms. Faisayo on that question. Nigeria First policy, what is Lagos State doing to really embrace that new policy that has come in from the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment? I don't know if Ms. Faisayo or Honorable Bumcam are still with us. Oh, okay.
Sorry, Aisha, I lost you for a second. My network, so I had to reconnect.
Sure. Not a problem.
Tired.
Not a problem. We're just talking about the Nigeria First policy and understanding how the Lagos state government is using that as an opportunity to patronize local products and services within the MSME sector.
Yeah, so I think this is one that I'm very, very always happy to speak about, because I always use myself as an example, and my colleagues around. A lot of us now in the office, everyone is literally wearing Buy Nigerian in terms of our outfits. Women, right? What we're wearing, we actually buy Nigerian. So it's really, really important that, charity begins at home, and we're really pushing that narrative and supporting MSMEs that, the whole idea around, Nigeria is inferior, Lagos inferior, that narrative has stopped. Everyone is literally owning that charge to buy Nigerian. And if there's a feedback or an issue with a particular product, people are encouraged to speak out to the beneficiaries. But actively at LSCTF, we're doing this through pop-up markets that we have in partnership with certain private sector and banks. So we support through trade fairs. We support through, I think EcoBank, for example, had an Adire market the last 2 months ago, GT Food Fair, supporting the food entrepreneurs. Agri Innovation had one supporting agriculture. So we plug into all of these pop-up markets to provide an avenue for our beneficiaries to showcase what they do, and making sure that their Nigerian produce really comes up tops, and it can stand beside any other produce that is done outside Nigeria. And if I can go back to the leather hub that was recently launched, I have spoken about a lot of the raw material is from factories in Nigeria that are producing leather. It's just changing the narrative that the entire value chain, from the raw material to the processing to the accessories, all of that is done locally. And we need to put that chart to make sure that the awareness is there and people know that they can trust Nigerian brands. But it starts with us, with our everyday wear, everyday produce, and all of that. So yeah, that's the charge, and we're owning that charge as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Faisal. And I absolutely agree with that. I don't happen to be wearing my dye lab today, but since people are proud to wear their locally made products, and it's not even just in Nigeria. People are wearing made in Nigeria abroad, and I think it's a thing to double down on that. Again, because we're short on time, I think I'm going to come up to the wrap up session. I do want to touch on a comment in the chat where folks are asking for more information. How can you learn more about LSCTF? How can you learn more about last week? Learn more about Enugu, and that's very juicy. 20,000 US dollar stipend that Mr. Rinze mentioned. This is why the NESG exists. We're bipartisan, non-partisan a group where the idea is how do public sector and private sector dialogue, and to bring in the points that were mentioned earlier, firely mentioned earlier by Dr. Tunde, and we do need that fire. That's what entrepreneurship gives you. There is the civic duty for Nigerians to practice. It's not just about expecting government to do things in isolation of your demands. And that will be one of the things that I implore folks listening to this in the room. If you feel like there are gaps, this is where NESG is really starting to, we've been doing this for 30 years, 30 plus years, but being that community where you can share those insights as to what are the gaps. We were not able to touch on AFCFTA on this conversation, but things like that in terms of, how can you trade with an intra-Africa perspective. And I think, wrapping up, there's always more that can be done. There's always room for growth. But I think we should also acknowledge where progress has been made. And if we press our policymakers more, they would listen. Let's think about what has happened in telecommunications with policy reforms. It's grown. Let's think about what has happened in banking. It's grown. Where there have been policy reforms, you've had, again, this is why if you think about the cashless policy being a propeller for money points growth. So this is where I really implore us all to really push our policymakers, push the likes of Honorable Bomcam in terms of saying, what needs to be done, and also putting Ms. Fayishayo and Mr. Arinze in the hot seat, where we're saying, yes, you've done this, it's great, but you need to do more. And to wrap up, I would like to bring a fellow colleague, Dr. Femi Egbeshola, who is the co-facilitator of the Community of Practice for the Micro, Small, Medium Enterprise. He's also president of the Association of Small Business Owners of Nigeria, just to share closing remarks from this conversation. And I hope we see most of you, if not all of you, at the NESG Summit in October. Over to you, Dr. Egbeshola.
No doubt it's been an engaging and insightful morning. We have been fed with practical insights, rich experiences, and insightful recommendations. And I'm sure that this was going to change our journey and shape it in our reforms, particularly when it comes to MSMEs across our states. So from our powerful keynote address speaker today, Dr. Bumi Dawodu of Spain and Lagos, to the diverse and thought-provoking contributions from our panelists, Mrs. Fayishayo Alayonde, Dr. Tunde Ayeye with the very energy of MSMEs, Dr. Bonkam Aliwuyep, and Mr. Arinze Chilo Ofia. We have seen very clearly that MSME growth is possible when reforms are state-led, well-structured, and properly supported. I also want to thank our moderators, Dr. Yewimi Eribo, and of course, very vibrant Mrs. Aisha Rahim Bolarinwo, who guided the discussion with such clarity, and with the support of our facilitator, Mrs. Amaka Nwaokolo, who also made this session very rich and also very practical. Let me assure you here and everyone that every point raised today has been carefully noted by the MSME community of practice. And of course, it's going to be one that we're going to use to guide our work moving forward. And I also want to also importantly say that it will also be part of the focus of discussion. Okay. All right. I hope my video is on now. Yes. So it's going to also be part of the focus of our discussion as we approach the bigger platform, which is the NES 31, which is going to take place on October 6th to 8th of this year in Abuja. So I want to use this opportunity to invite all of us to see how we can register for this very big platform where our voices, our recommendations will be echoed on the biggest national platform where we meet policymakers, the leaders of government that can actually make this reform possible for us to benefit. I don't want you to really take the papers after the event. I want you to take the key steps now. And I hope this will be dropped. The link will be dropped in the chat box so that we can also take advantage of it at the present. On that note, finally, on behalf of the MSME community of practice and the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, I want to say a big thank you to our speakers, to the participants who made this possible, to the moderators, to our facilitator, and possibly myself too, for having this wonderful session. May God continue to bless all of us as we continue our work in reshaping the MSME ecosystem. See you October in the NES 31. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone. Stay blessed.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much to all our speakers. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.